Welcome back to the Nightlife Podcast, Season 3, Episode 12. And today I come to you from my home office slash studio where, I brought this to you guys because a lot of you are asking that you want to be part of the show and you want to be able to bring value to people in the nightlife industry all over the world. And you may not be in Miami. And the only way to get this done is through technology, which is part of the subject we're going to be talking about today. So without further ado, we go to the Netherlands to my friend, David Franzen. How are you, David?
Yes. Hello, hello. Yes, I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Dave, so anyway, I just start usually every show with telling everybody a little bit about who I'm interviewing. So why don't you help me with that?
Absolutely. So my name is David Franzen. I am the founder of a company called Nocto, based out of the Netherlands. And we've been working on what we think is a really cool project that's we think gonna really revolutionize basically the nightlife industry, bring to it an aspect of introducing modern technology basically to what we think is still a very old school industry that is still using quite outdated ways of marketing and relationship building. And so I got in touch with Julio now I'd say almost maybe 6 months ago or something. I was just looking out for people with experience in the nightlife industry. And your name popped up, and we've been in touch for a couple times through Skype, through phone calls, that kind of stuff. And just really excited to be on the show today.
I actually can't wait to go over there personally. I know you guys party a little bit, a little more
just
than
let
us
me
here.
know when you're here, and I'm sure we'll have a good time.
So what time is it over there anyway? Because
It's 9 p.m. So
All
it's
right. Okay.
still early.
Cool. All right, so David, so one of the things I talk about a lot is the subject of the evolution and the changes in the nightlife industry. And there are many different things that have been changing. And we always mention millennials and blame everything on millennials and the way that they're different, even though listening to Gary Vee, we always hear it's not millennials, it's those of us who parent to those millennials
Yep.
who are, at fault, really. But, it's really, we should take this as a positive, the whole evolution of it, I believe. And when I met with you, when the first time that we spoke, I was listening to what you had. And at first, I got a little scared, even though we're not going to dig into exactly what Nocto does and is going to do specifically, which you guys have to stand by for that. The reality is that at first I got a little scared. I was like, are these guys coming to do harm to those of us that have been doing this for a long time? Or are they here to help us? And that was one of the first things that I asked. And then I think I got the right answer from you. I don't know if you want to get a little into that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about because, of course, when new technologies come about, and change always means that by definition, things are going to change, right? So the way that things that have been done for a long time are at risk, let's say. So I think that what is a natural outcome of that change is that people either, if it is the right change and it's there to stay, then people either need to adopt or they're not going to be able to compete, basically. So I think that it's absolutely a risk for the way that things have been done, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that's also should be seen as an opportunity for the established and the traditional players to not, naively maybe stick to their old ways. But obviously they the traditional way of working has worked and is working. But with new technology comes new opportunities.
Right.
So yeah.
The last two episodes, actually, I interviewed a guy who was my first partner, and we spoke about all the mistakes that we made in an episode that's actually airing today, and also we spoke about the difference between the old school and I guess new school and and the way that things are done lately. But one of the things that worries me about the way that, for example, social media, it's one of the big parts of all of these changes, has brought a change into. I go particularly into, for example, when it comes to marketing. When it comes to
Yeah.
marketing, a lot of people are struggling because they believe, okay, so now I have to put all my eggs in the social media basket, and they forget about everything else. So we are in an industry, and this is something I think we spoke about before also. We are in an industry where it's hospitality. So the personal touch in it is never going to be taken away by any robot or a computer or AI, or, you know what I mean? But a lot of the new generation basically thinks, let me be the best at this part. I'm gonna be posting all day long. I'm gonna be the best storyteller in those stories, whatever. And most of them are posting crazy pictures that have nothing to do with the business or whatever. But in the end, they think, okay, so posting a flyer or posting this or that kind of thing is gonna do it. But it really
It's not complete. It's not
exact
complete. But I think
exactly
that's what you said is true in the sense that because of it being hospitality, the human touch, that the personal relationship is never going to be obsolete. There's always going to be a need for the human aspect of it. But
right.
with the same logic, that also doesn't mean that social media and technology can also have a positive impact. And
Correct.
I think that's what we are working on very as one of our core basically concepts with Nocto, is actually to how can we use technology to further personal relationships.
Okay.
And that those two don't have to be in competition,
Correct.
basically.
Which currently they are, in a way, most of them.
Yeah, but I think that's because we're at this point where that's kind of between what the world before social media and the world with social media, is that people really haven't figured out how those two worlds are supposed to be working together,
Correct.
and because of that, they're now being seen as competitors to each other.
Right.
But I mean, like, we will always have the human, the personal, physical like aspect to it. And now in 2019, we see it that world without social media is also not gonna basically be a thing,
Right.
unless something goes very very wrong.
Right.
So yeah, we do live in a world, not that we will, but we do live in a world where technology and the human relationship need to work together.
Correct. No, I'm asking from the heart because it is. I've been doing this 25 years. So it's important to me. It's something that even though people tell me, when the hell are you gonna retire? I'm like, I just can't. It just doesn't allow me. It brings you right back in. But we have kind of understood that we need to be, I guess, evolve with all of this, and be ready for all those changes at the same time, whatever. So we learned, and one of the things that we learned is to understand how things work. I took a lot of courses on different things to understand how things work, like with social media and the new ways of advertising and all those, and the way that some of the apps work and everything. But at the same time, the best decision we made was hiring people that are better than us at all of those things. Correct. Nowadays, we offer the services of most of everything that has to do with social media. We also offer services to even our competition and to other venues and different companies or whatnot.
Yeah.
Because I guess they see what we've been doing with it, and they understand, okay, these guys know what they're doing. They ask us, who does it for you? We're like, we do it ourselves. But yeah, it just started growing in that direction. But now sometimes I worry. The other day, actually, my father asked a question, and it was just, do you think this world would survive today if the internet and social media completely disappeared? Boom, right off the face of the earth at this moment. And he was just not trying to, ask a big question. He was trying to make conversation and have me look at his face because I was probably next to him on the phone.
Yeah.
But I actually thought about it, and I was like, all right, so my business, like, oh my God, we would close. No, I mean, like, so many things, I would have to go back to the old school, which I would love. I would love to do a lot of things, go back to the way they were. But the reality is that, how do you feel about that? What do you think would happen if something that crazy were to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be an absolutely enormous change. I mean, I know how it is myself, that the moment my Wi-Fi is down or I'm out of a spot with no cell reception, it's a complete crisis basically. And then that's really scary, because it's in those moments that you feel so dependent on it basically.
Yeah, you used a scary word. A friend of mine posted a picture of Halloween pumpkin. You know how people do carvings on the pumpkins,
Yeah.
and the carving said, low Wi-Fi,
Yeah.
and she was like, "This is seriously scary," and it's the way that a lot of the new
Yeah.
generation see it. I can't even imagine what's next. What's going? My kids are 5 and 2 years old. I don't know what they're gonna how they're gonna be feeling about all this stuff when they're in their 50s,
Yeah.
and
But
whatever
they
the
grew up, so for them
correct.
it's going to be it's they're going to be even more dependent on it than we are
Yeah,
because I mean I do too. Yeah, we remember life basically pre-internet. But they won't they won't know the concept of not being able to just look something up on Google. That
right,
that concept is going to be completely unknown to them
right.
basically. But
But
I
now,
think that
go ahead, go ahead. You were saying?
I was just going to say that I mean obviously us being dependent on the internet is on one side a very scary thought. But again, I think that it does then open up ourselves and our business basically to a world of opportunity in the sense that it is a medium then that we are dependent on, but it is the medium that opens ourselves up to connecting with people on the other side of the world. This Skype call being a perfect example of that. I
Right,
mean, without the internet, I would not have found you. I would not have been able to connect with you. We
correct.
would not have been able to discuss what we're working on and your expertise and your network in Miami and
Right.
the ways in which that this could be an opportunity for both of us. So there's a clear amount of advantages also
It's
that of
funny,
course the
it's funny that you
internet.
mentioned that part because the conversation that started, that my dad started, ended kind of in a very awkward conversation of the way things were back then, back in his, junior years, and how they would date their cousins because of not being able to reach anybody else. It was just like
Yeah, that
that,
was it.
those
Like
are the
take
people
it
you
or leave it.
see,
Yeah.
when you lived in a small town, and it was like, that's it. Your cousins are your neighbors, and it's like, all right, just date the cousins. And I'm like, so I'm glad that is not that way anymore.
Yeah, I think we all are. Yeah.
And who knows, at some point in time in the future, not hopefully not too near, this, how you talk about being able to reach me now, being in the Netherlands, and me here. Who knows if we are having conversations about the guy in Mars and the guy here, and different
Yeah,
planets. Like
eventually.
it's
Eventually yeah, that I guess is that's a very strong possibility if things continue
that's
as they
that
are.
that's one thing I would love to see, a party in Mars. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the best thing that it brings when it comes, and now getting back into mostly nightlife? When it comes to nightlife, what do you think, the technology in general, everything that has come out, the things that are, that are being built and are
Yeah.
underground and not being told and talked about,
Yeah.
because I'm sure there's many things that are being built at this moment, because a lot of people, I've realized, by the way, that a lot of people are trying to catch on to this niche, in the hospitality, but mostly in the nightlife.
Yeah.
There
It's it's
hasn't
it's an
been.
underserved market for sure,
Yes.
especially with regard to technology. I mean, you look at any other major, or I wouldn't, yeah, if you look at banking or healthcare or agriculture or infrastructure, all of those have already been revolutionized by technology and now have established tech in place that
Right.
is core to how that industry works, but that hasn't yet happened in nightlife.
Right.
And I think that part of the reason for that is because when investors look at what they have money to spend on, basically their first priority is not going to be basically to invest that into nightlife, which is understandable because healthcare and agriculture and all that kind of stuff goes obviously above in the priority list. Nightlife is a thing that results from disposable income, but that also doesn't mean that we should that we can simply ignore it, because it is a huge industry,
Right.
both on a local level but also on a global level. I mean, every medium-sized town has a bar. you
Right.
know.
By the way, for us Latinos, disposable income is everything that comes after the money you spend on nightlife.
Right. Yeah. It is a fixed cost. It is a
Correct.
fixed
Correct.
part of your budget. Right. I see. Nice.
No, but I think one of the things is this: the apps, for example, any app that's been built out there, they have to think about the club
Yeah.
ownership or management, whatever. They have to think about the promoters because there is that marketing group in the middle that is
Hmm.
very involved in a lot of the countries. That's one of the big cases here, that it's not the same everywhere. And
Yeah.
then you have the end user.
Hmm.
So which is more important?
Well, they're all important. I mean, if you take away the people, then the clubs are going to close, and if you take away the clubs, then people are just
But
going
is
to set up
do you
house
think
parties, I
do you
guess.
think there's any way to say, for example, like chicken or the egg, like what comes first?
Um, yeah, I do think so. Well, maybe I'm not sure if so much from the perspective of nightlife as a whole, but definitely with Nocto, what we realized was the first priority was getting the venues, the businesses on board,
Okay.
because in order to create an app, the app market is so competitive that you really need to have a strong value proposition for people to download your app.
Correct.
And if you don't have participating bars and clubs and restaurants and hotels and whatnot that are in your system, then unless it's a peer-to-peer app like Tinder, um, you are dependent on there being venues that are participating for there to be a reason for people to have the app in the first place. So we
Right.
absolutely focused first on the B2B side,
Right.
and then when we had a local critical mass of bars and clubs, that's when we started marketing it to the people. And then it was interesting for them because they knew that they could go and use our service basically in those locations
Correct. How difficult is it to get clubs to use a service
with no
when
users.
there's no users yet? Exactly, or very few.
It's very hard. But that, I mean that's part of the game. I think that's the case with anything. I mean, you need to have a demand and a supply. You can have a whole bunch of stuff, but if nobody wants to buy it, it doesn't matter really that the thing is cool.
Right.
So it's really hard, and I think that it's it. I don't want to say it's particularly hard in the nightlife industry, but because of the fact that a lot of the decision makers on the business side are more traditional, are more old school, without users, we really need to pitch to them based on the potential that this app has and that this
Right.
business has to bring to you. But if they haven't experienced the need for this in the past, like I've done very well as a business owner without this app,
Right.
then it's very hard to convince them basically to invest part of their brand reputation and of course then a subscription fee or whatever your business model is
Correct.
to purchase a product that you don't need yet.
Right.
But that's what we're telling them is basically like, yes, like at this point, it's early days, but we're
Right.
building something here that in whether it's a couple months or whether it's a couple years, venues will need to have this service in order to compete. So the way we kind of came about that is to kind of create like an early bird discount. So we kind of packaged it up. We identified what the price would be for a full year for our service, and we
Which
said, look,
which which by the way, David, I mean, we spoke about this. We spoke about those prices. We spoke, and I'm being 100% honest with you. I've talked to other people that are doing other things, and you nailed it on that one. It's very
yeah,
important. It is very important to have that
yeah,
early bird. You know.
for sure. I mean, and we had to kind of subsidize, I guess might be a good word actually for it. We had to subsidize the business side of it to get the chicken on board, so that we can start laying eggs.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's
So
cool.
yeah, I think that they're both important, but from our perspective, we had to start on the B2B.
So I
So
mentioned a little, time back, the difference between the way that people do this in different countries. I
hmm
understand that your plan for Nocto is to go worldwide, and I believe it will, and it will be do great worldwide. Now the thing is this: how difficult is it with the fact that things work differently in the different, countries, markets, whatever, especially when it comes to the way business works. For example, here in the US, we talk about the promoter. For
Yeah.
example, a lot of the businesses work with promoters. The ones that don't have promoters most likely end up looking for a promoter at some point in time. If we're
Because they need
talking
it.
nightlife, that's, I don't know how much of that is true in the Netherlands.
It's yeah. Well, I mean, we discussed this as you said in our previous calls that in the Netherlands, having like employed promoters is quite rare.
Right.
I mean, obviously you have ambassadors, you have people that are, promoting in not in as official of a role.
Right.
Just people who are associated, who know the bartenders, who know the club owners, who of course are going to share the events and talk to people about it. But it's not as formal of a relationship that those people have with the
Right.
venues. But
Right.
I think that's kind of where social media comes in, because you mentioned something interesting here where the venues in Miami, for example, they either have promoters or they look for promoters because promoters are their way to reach the people.
Correct.
And that's kind of what I want to talk about today as well is the role that social media is going to have in connecting the people with the venues.
Hmm.
And you mentioned this as well before, is that kind of the promoter aspect is potentially not in its entirety at risk, but its importance in the nightlife ecosystem is a little bit at risk because now the venues depend on the promoters to reach the people.
Right.
But with solutions like the one that we're building, and I'm sure a lot of other people are building something similar because of the fact that this market is huge, social media presents an amazing opportunity for people to explore, to discover, to find out about what's available, what it's like, where to go, where not to go, where to go when. And from the business perspective, also a way for them to promote themselves, to be seen or to be found by the people.
Correct.
So it's social media, especially, or not especially again, but in nightlife is going to be and already is a crucial aspect in marketing. I mean, a venue could do well, not great, but could do well by basing its marketing exclusively on social media.
That is correct. That is true. I mean, then depending on that, for example, let's not talk about the fact that, the internet's not going to go anywhere, but apps, for example, do come and go. We don't know how long, for example, Instagram, which is the one that people are putting most of their eggs into currently,
Yep.
where it's going to go. Over here in the US, I don't know how big it is over there, but TikTok is right now blowing up like crazy. I have no idea what what the reason is that people are doing those videos. I spend, some time watching them because it is funny and I don't know. I like it in a way. It's entertaining. I just haven't figured out how marketers are going to be able to use it for this. Even though I do see sponsored ads and some of them, I go, that's what they're doing, but it's not that that common. And I think it's like 20-year-old average. Like that's like
I think it is. I think it is more for the younger demographic. I mean, obviously in the States, the drinking age, for example, is 21.
yes,
So the majority of TikTok users on a end consumer level are probably too young to be
right.
participating in nightlife.
But for example, I did hear that some companies, because TikTok is for some reason being used by big companies, and they are
To
built
reach young audiences.
but those
Yeah.
young audiences to convince their parents of buying stuff too. So
I see you watch Gary V, because I watched the Gary V
Yes.
thing, and he was exactly talking about that.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
that, through TikTok you might be able to you might be reaching audiences that are slightly younger than your actual purchaser.
Yeah,
But
I hated Gary the first time I heard him, and then I realized that I hated him because he was me, but
good. Yeah.
made it much better.
Yeah.
But I believe 100% almost everything he
Yeah.
talks about. So,
Yeah.
and actually, it's one thing that I would love to ask him at some point in time is, because he doesn't talk about the nightlife much. He's talked about hospitality. He's talked about restaurants and interviewed a few people in the restaurant industry and all this. But I would love to to see what he thinks about this evolution, because besides social media, there's other things that are also evolving in the nightlife. And I have talked about this before, is the fact that a lot of people are doing different kinds of events that are not even during the night. A lot of
Yeah.
brunches around the world. A lot of happy hours growing a lot. Before it used to be a lot of after hours, and now there's not that many after hours. At least here in the U.S., I don't know. Again,
Yeah, I
if
can
it's
I can
different.
see the same trend here. I mean, I think that it's people realize that it was nightlife in the past, I guess, was more just confined to the night. But I
Correct.
guess now it's not so much nightlife anymore, but it's more events than
Correct.
nightlife, let's say, basically, because there's no what you need to have a good event basically is good music, good people, and good vibes,
Right.
which is not, the night is not a requirement basically
Right. And the hardest thing to get out of all of those is the people. And that's why for so long it's been, I guess, easy for us to have a job most of the time. But right now I have a lot of clients that are club owners that I am consulting, and the first thing they say is, I want to bring more people. I don't want to use promoters.
Yeah.
And my answer at the beginning was, you're gonna have to.
Hmm.
Then it became, let me train you to build a team of your own. And then it
Yeah.
became, let me train you guys to do it by yourself using social media.
Yeah.
So it has been evolving also in that sense. And the reason is that there's also not so much of a good name for the promoter everywhere. You got to have a name that is something respected. Like for example, for us, it's our relationships with the clubs are usually years and years long. You know,
Yeah.
um, and usually when we leave, it's like, why, like, what's going on? We don't want you guys to leave, and it's just, okay, so it's time. It's been a decade. We gotta move on.
Yeah.
But most of promoters, it's like a 2 month relationship, and it ends bad because whatever, somebody got drunk, or it just, they just
Yeah.
didn't do the right thing, or they were selling a bottle that was a free bottle, or I don't know, so many
Yeah.
different things that can happen. So I see why a lot of the owners would want to find a solution that erases that middleman.
Exactly. That's what tech is about. Tech is about solving inefficiencies,
Hmm.
and the concept of a promoter
Correct.
is quite inefficient because it completely cuts the business's profits.
Right.
And in a way that, like, if you as an end consumer are being approached by a promoter, basically, hey, you should go to this party,
Hmm.
you're being pushed basically this specific event.
Correct.
But what social media is going to enable people to do is to not necessarily be pushed to going to that one event that is being promoted by the promoter, but to enable them to make an informed decision, to have access to, okay, there are 10 places I could go to, and which of them is most in line with what kind of music I want to go to, is close to my house or wherever,
Correct.
and has a right amount of people, not too many, not too few. And from the other side, from the business perspective, is they're going to be reaching people beyond the reach of the promoter. They're not dependent on that promoter having
Right.
those people in their relationship, um, and of course also saving them a lot of money.
Right. So I'm
So
gonna I'm
it's
gonna I'm gonna plug myself here a little bit. One of the reasons that I teach this course on for promoters and get paid to party, which you know where to get, is because of that. It's because there's an evolution in the nightlife industry that a lot of promoters don't understand how to survive in this evolving world. So there's a lot of the old school ways that if you apply them today, there's going to be a big difference between you and anything that is brought as competition to you guys at when it comes to technology or anything like that. And even if it's not technology you're competing with, if anybody else, it's just another person, another company at the same time doing something like this, and actually going through a course and seeing what somebody else has done and all their mistakes is going to be better for you. But when it comes to the technology and all that evolution that you cannot stop, the best thing you can do is learn a little bit about the old ways and the old
yeah,
school ways, and it's definitely going to make things better for you, especially when it comes to club owners making a decision as to who to work with. You know.
Absolutely. That's something we noticed as well. I mean, obviously, what we're presenting to the club owners is a new, innovative, relatively then high tech solution. And what we found is that obviously, emails is not the right way to approach these people, because that's not, they're not sitting behind their computers reading emails all day,
No, the
right?
open rate has gone down so much. It's crazy.
Yeah, but so even though we're trying to implement new modern technology, that doesn't mean we can simply throw out the old school out the window, because what we actually recently started doing is that we actually started approaching prospect clients through post.
Right.
Because when we sent emails, we had a very low click through rate, because they might be receiving them, but they're very operational focused, and maybe not so much focused on their emails. But the moment we start sending them post, which is the medium through which that they are getting, they have to pay taxes or whatever, like they're getting important documents that they can't avoid through post. So that the post medium is something that they will be keeping an eye on. So we again come back to the need of having a balance of new technology and old school methods.
Right. David, are you planning to involve promoters with your plans with Nocto, or just clubs?
Are you asking about involving promoters as a sort of middleman?
I guess as another entity. I guess end up
in that case. In that case, no. I think what we are definitely going to be implementing is right now our solutions on the B2B side cater directly to the venues themselves. But we've seen an enormous demand for event organizers, which I think is not, they're obviously not the same as promoters, but it's more in that line. Right. So we will be including event organizers and festivals and artists.
Okay, because I see what I normally when I talk to people in Europe, and what they see as event organizers usually is what we see here as main promoters.
Right. Okay.
Because main promoters here kind of also produce some events that are outside of any club or whatever. Produce concerts, small, big, depending, whatever. Also work with clubs, but different clubs on different nights. And that's where the issues come in. Other people that I have helped in the past with developing apps and all that kind of stuff that have to do with the nightlife run into one little problem, and is they go to a club and they say, for example, okay, so give me the information of all the nights you have, and they go, no, wait, I can't approve anything for all the nights because it's a different company that runs every night. The way we do it. So basically, we are partners in the clubs for specific nights.
Yes. So we've I see exactly where you're going with this, and we are also making we're implementing basically a second profile type, as we're calling it, in our business services. The first then being directly to the bars, clubs, restaurants, and hotels, and the second profile type will enable then event organizers or
main promoters,
main promoters to also have a business profile basically, and to actively use the technology to reach potential clients and to continuously build up that relationship.
Correct. All right. So that way I know now that all those promoters that are listening are not going to run out there and say, "Oh, I don't want Nocto to come to my city." I see it. I've seen a lot of what you guys are doing, and I know that whenever you guys are coming over here and wherever you're going around the world, it's something that's being brought to help the clubs. It's being brought to help whoever's producing the event, and it's also being brought to help the end user, and their experience. So that is the main thing. If you are taking care of all those three, to me, it doesn't matter really which way you go, where you start first. I do believe the way you're doing it is the correct one, but I don't know how you're doing it. But you need salespeople to understand that part, and which is one thing I am not. But I believe in what you guys have. I like the idea. I know my partner, there's one of them that loves what you guys are doing. As I told you before, he's been thinking about something like that for a long time. We just think about it, we don't do it. So I'm glad that somebody's doing it.
Taking action. Yeah,
exactly. So I don't know, David. I want to leave you since it is already over half an hour. I want to make sure that So it goes by real fast, huh?
Yeah, sure.
Any last thoughts you want to leave people with? Any comments to either promoters, club owners, anybody that's in the nightlife industry, relevant to what we have been talking about?
Absolutely. I think my closing comment would be with what you kind of also just said now, that what we're working on is not to compete with the existing infrastructure, but to improve the existing infrastructure. So we want to help people to better find and enjoy nightlife experiences. We want to help venues, brands, and event organizer promoters to better reach their audience and to create relationships with their audience. And overall, the society as a whole is going to benefit from this. It's going to make the system more effective. Yeah, what we're doing, I'm discussing with Julio a little bit now about more in details. Yeah, absolutely expecting for Nocto to soon expand beyond the Dutch borders, and who knows when we'll be in Miami.
Dave, where can people find you?
So I think best would be through LinkedIn. I think you post these podcasts on LinkedIn, I see, and also, of course, on your website. Yes. But I think LinkedIn would be the most effective way to reach me. So just search for David Franzen, and I'm sure I'll be among the hits there.
Awesome. Dave, thank you so much. And I have a feeling we're going to be talking soon again, hopefully, either here in Miami or in the Netherlands. But thank you so much for your time today. All right.
Thank you for hosting me. It's been a lot of fun. Yes.
No problem. So, guys, thank you one more time. I will definitely see you next time. Remember to get my book on Amazon. Go watch all the other episodes on nightlifepodcast.com. Go get the course on nightlife.university. And remember to go to our sponsors parties at LMG Miami. See you next week.